To use religious words, silence is the language of God, and stillness and the knowing of the experience of stillness is not simply to be present to God, but to be undivided from God. In other words, the knowing of our own being is the experience of love, knowing love. So in the noticing of that ever-present beingness, this stillness, there is nothing to get, and there is no one to get what appears as an imagined or supposedly required something missing or anything. As stillness, there's no event to capture called enlightenment or a spiritual awakening. There isn't anything here that reinforces a concept called spirituality or otherwise. Here, there is an immeasurable, profoundly ordinary realization of the way things are. And as they are not happening to or for anyone. They just are. Now, that one that takes itself to be here to get something of this nature will find only a radically emphatic disappointment. Because as we see, what is realized is relentlessly and remorselessly empty. And such emptiness is the very last thing that the apparent person wants to discover. Like an illusion discovering its own illusory nature. This vast sense of beingness, this stillness, known, is knowing only its own presence and the absence of anything separated or outside of it. The apparent personality does not want to have this absolute truth shone into and on its own relative vacuity in such a way. to at last have an unyielding light shone into a bottomless, roofless nothing. The luminosity of simply being illuminates the nothing to reveal it as the only thing there is and isn't. And the usual energy of the contracted personality evaporates in a puff of nothingness. The persistent pattern held onto by the apparent seeking seeker to fill the emptiness seeks to fulfill an ordinary idea of securing an event called God. Our usual word is happiness. Yet this radical stillness sees such an eternally liberating recognition absolutely dissolve any pretense about this current nothing being anything other than an expanding and unlimiting emptiness. There is nothing here except everything. The very nature of this emptiness, seemingly appearing as an apparent movement of what really is as it is, and emptiness apparently appearing as this very something, is simply stillness, energetically seeming to move to know only its own emptiness, to know itself. And the sincere seeker and all its efforts finally realize its works this far have amounted to this current realization of nothingness, as it finds out under the light of the very closest of inspections to be the only veiling and the only veil for this movement of present energy, this embrace of stillness. There is now no sign of a person or an empowering will that has ever really done anything to enable this realizing moment to be known. Nothing done this far has brought us to this here. Even this realizing moment is given, but it is not given to anyone, but is givingness giving to itself, nothingness, appearing as somethingness. For the seeker, through usual efforts, this is the most calamitous news, as it realizes all previous desire to be acknowledged as a righteous claimer, owner, doer and successful champion of 1,000,000 hours of effort, past practices and money spent, are now radically cast aside as waste under the luminous presence that gives rise to the feeling and the final thought that all constantly exhausting efforts to prove life is going well are only for itself. And by every effort to control others' responses to its performance, through its constant self-referencing, and the insistence on navigating a perfected, failing, cyclic life it thinks it's having. And how here in this, as it is, all effort can be seen as a ruse. Lives have been filled up until now with an urge to seek, and this has been a reinforced pattern with an insistent prompting as to whether the activities and plans are going either well or terribly. But in either case, there arises a constant fixation on performance and a narrative mental chatter about how all of these activities, good and bad, are things happening to me. The same me which here we will enduringly recognize in a fleeting encounter. Has managed to create an illusion of a terribly complex life, with pockets of futility and lies about where truth might be found. So once more, this presence to what is crushingly terrible news to the personality. But it is really only the death of a disastrous illusion that something can be found that will set that same personality free from itself, whilst keeping itself intact. Strange paradox, to be sure. Instead, this lie is seen through. The finding is that there is absolutely nothing to be found. No cute new phrase to post. No enduring insight. No better feeling or feeling better. No vindication of any one experience over another's loss. No success and no championing of the heartfelt cause. And for the same attending spiritual seeker, it's even worse. Because the narrative, the mask of the earnest spiritual salvationist, the person who claims, this is my last and only hope. Well, even that idealized image outcome is seen as incontrovertibly dead. So this experience, as it is, right here, having so far reduced all previous concepts and identifications, and the very preciousness of each person's precocious personality, right down to the very emptiness that we now see it is. We see only what remains. An indivisible, vast, centerless, circumferenceless, wide awake, clear, accepting, luminous, total, broad, unlimiting, unrestricting, objectless emptiness, an expansive knowing of this. This is real. The knowing experience of what is as it is reality. Reality as an unavoidable knowingness, but not known by an individual person, and containing no one and nothing but its own self, for no reason other than the radically accepting essential clearness that this is. This is the isness business. For these pointed words towards knowing absolute truth, not egoic, subjective truth, but truth that is true for each of us, for all peoples. For such truth to be fully realized, and remember, not by any person. The absence of the usual impulse to identify as the one who might be able to realize this nothing as an apparent something must evaporate. In fact, an actual nothing or no thing is happening to an actual no one. But we can say that the no thing or nothingness or stillness, the experience of the Absolute is happening, we cannot say nothing is happening. Wholeness is, and separation from it and the illusion of that isn't happening, because there is no person who could be separated from wholeness. Otherwise it wouldn't be whole. There would be something apart from it. And that same apparent seeking person would be seeking to make a connection to the whole, to the something. It is not, in fact, separated or apart from. This is the meaning of the word disease, to be away from or apart from. And there is no found grand purpose in trying to make a connection to nothing, because there is nowhere or nothing for anything or anyone to go or change or improve, and no one who needs to do these things in order for wholeness to be improved. Nothing here is lacking. What is wholeness is complete. The circle is complete. And it is complete without interference from an imagined conceptual personality that has manufactured numerous ideas and plans on how an undivided nothing could be improved or enhanced towards becoming a better something before we finally could call it anything. The persistence of the illusion of personality that cries something is missing stems from an egoic sense of lack, into which human beings create and have created every last kind of effort to alleviate or escape suffering through championed works and sustained and ever-increased activities, arising out of the discovery that nothing is missing. This sense of lack dissolves under the light of an inherent fullness encountered through this same realization. If what is realized is fully embodied, then one uncovers an enduring knowing that nothing lay outside of this presence of knowing wholeness. And if nothing is outside this wholeness, then why does the persistence of seeming to be separate or aloneness seem to return? Because the pattern of sensed identification as a distinct, thinking, perceiving person is so royally ingrained, so cathected, so addicted to, that presence to the realization can appear as easily lost by the seemingly energetic, constant movement of attention as it is habitually diverted out of its own self and into an endless world of object relations. That is to say, attention is simply addicted to the pattern of focusing on approved and disapproved external things to bring about internal understanding or happiness or peace. And once our true nature is recognized, this pattern quickly dissipates, though sometimes hangs with tenacity. This direct path to understanding or peace or happiness or love or God or stillness, whichever word suits. Through this there is a pointing of the attention past all its usual object relations, past all movements seemingly happening to an apparent subject, to rest in itself as an open, empty space of knowing wholeness, easily and ultimately recognizable and embodied as ever present and never absent. Our usual word for this is I. And the I that we refer to is not yours. It belongs only to its self. And the knowingness of experience is the I experiencing only itself. This contracted me that we refer to is neither who you are nor belongs to the I. The I knows only itself and does not know anything about an apparent me, nor anything called a thought, a feeling or a perception. I mean, is there any greater profundity that we could know? Can we think of anything more vast? How can a message be for something that doesn't exist? It cannot, and it isn't. So the message is not for the person. This is why we call it recognition. It is to recognize that we've known and are knowing all along our true nature, but have overlooked its essence by trying to find it through works. Like the sun trying to find its shine, and like the TV trying to locate the screen. So we, as a me, have been trying to perfect the sense of I. As we saw, this I doesn't belong to me. So recognition is simply the notion that we have never left home. And the idea that we have is only created by our efforts to try and find our way back to where we already are. This message is then not for the sense of separation. As we saw, how can a message be for something that we cannot find? The message would then be lost. It is a message pointing to that which knows and is knowing, home, as its self.